Okay, so why am I looking at the Sony a5100, which is a camera that is now about 2 years old? Well, because it's still a good camera. The key is that technology moves so fast, especially camera technology over the last few years, that cameras that were made just a couple years ago, a few years ago, are still really good options. And what that does for you as someone who may be getting into video or is already doing video is it makes the price to get in to shooting nice high quality video, it makes that more affordable. So the Sony a5100 is less than 500 for the body only, and then this is a 16 to 50 millimeter 3.5 to 5.6 with image stabilization on it, and that's the kit lens that comes with or came with this camera. I'll be returning this one. It's a review unit, but you can get that for just under 600 in the US, and I've seen some really good deals on it. So that was some of the primary reasons why I was looking at a camera that is, you know, considered old at this point. I'm also still interested in a perfect vlogging camera. I tried the G7X from Canon. It had some focus issues on shallow depth of field. I saw a little bit of that here, but definitely not the same. And for me, this camera probably is a perfect vlogging camera, but let's talk about all the other things I like and don't like about the Sony a5100 for just shooting video in general. So saying this camera is a great vlogging camera, one of the reasons is this screen, but it also means that it is a camera that I might take with me everywhere. So you're seeing the Sony a5100 now, and that over here is the Canon 60D. So the Sony a5100 is so small, you can see that it fits in the palm of my hand very easily, and the image stabilization in the lens is really good, even at arm's length with one hand. But the key is, again, I can fit it in my pocket and take it with me. I've got the 180-degree screen is why you see me looking up. And it's kind of the camera beyond my phone that I have with me, much more than my Canon 60D, which is a lot harder to carry around. Now, because this camera does work great in a vlogging setup, the microphone is less important because the microphones on board the Sony a5100, interestingly, are a stereo microphone, so it would be great for capturing ambient sounds. For voice, you can just mix that down to mono, but it does a good job at arm's length. However, the major downside is that this doesn't have an audio input. So for me, it's almost a deal breaker, at least in terms of a primary camera. I'm not gonna buy this as my first camera unless I'm planning to shoot dual system sound, where I got a lav mic plugged into an audio recorder and I'm recording the audio off of the camera. And then you sync it up in post with the audio that's recorded on the camera. So if you're gonna do that, if that's your plan, then this could be a primary camera with an image that is just as good as the Canon line, the consumer Canon line of crop sensor cameras. This is also an APS-C sensor camera. There's not a ton of lenses for the Sony yet, but the ones they do have, they seem good to me. I've enjoyed even the kit lens, and I also got this 35mm f1.8, and it's also image stabilized. So really nice lens to go on it, but to be honest with you, I've been shooting most of the time with the kit lens because that wide angle really helps when you're capturing things out and about. And again, if you're gonna be vlogging, a wide angle is really something you need. Now the Sony a6000, you could go up to that. They have a unit that you can put on the hot shoe and plug in a microphone, 3.5mm port. It's really bulky, has microphones on it as well, but you have to pay more. And with the a6000, although you get a much better built camera, I believe it's a metal body versus this plastic body of the a5100, while it's better, you lose the tilt screen, which for me is also something that I absolutely need. If you're shooting YouTube video or just video where you need to actually see yourself because you are sitting in front of the camera and there is no cameraman, you're the cameraman or camera person, then you need to be able to see that screen. It's really helpful for making sure the recording's still going, you're in focus, and that the composition is right, all of those things, very important. In addition with that, you get a touch screen, but that touch screen is very limited. It's fine when it works, but you can't really navigate the menus with it. In picture mode, you can snap a picture, but what's important for us is video, And in video mode, it does do something that is actually really cool and helpful. You can touch the screen, it'll punch into the image, it'll magnify, so you can see that image on a small screen much closer, and you can tell if it's actually in focus. And what's even more cool is that you can do this in real time. So like on my Canon 60D, I cannot digitally punch in real time to check that focus while I'm recording. On the A5100, I can simply touch the screen where I want it to jump into. That's also very important. Just point where I want to focus or zoom into, and I get that focus. In addition with that, you get focus peaking, which is the little red, yellow, or white lines, however you set it, around an image that is in focus. So you can zoom in. The peaking works better when you are zoomed in. The peaking, while is another thing I really like, it seems like it could work a little better, but you get peaking, you also get zebra stripes on the screen so that when something is overexposed, you can set the level to tell you when it's overexposed, or when skin is overexposed at like 70%, you have zebra levels, you have peaking, you have a touch to focus. So those are all advanced features that you get on this basically consumer level camera. Now, of course, I'm calling it consumer level camera, but it has the quality of, I would say, the high-end consumer level Canons, like the 70D, the 60D you see here, T5i, T40i. They all shoot, I would say, about the same. The ISO on the A5100 can go up to 26,500, and I had the Sony A7S for a while, which you saw on this channel, some of the demos from that, which I absolutely love. It can see in the dark. That's another thing about checking out this older camera, is I'm curious about what Sony's doing all across their line, and they are doing very exciting things, like all these features they give you for relatively low price. So the Sony A7S, while it can see in the dark and do it pretty clean, this one is not going to do that. It is comparable to the Canon DSLR crop sensor line in that right around 800, 1000, 1200 is about, I think, the limit on the ISO before it starts getting noticeably noisy in the image. So it can do really high ISOs, but you're probably not going to have much usable video up at that range. Another exciting thing you get with the A5100 is a codec called XAVCS. But the XAVCS codec has a bigger dynamic range, and you can push it around, the image around in post more. You hear that, but what does it mean? For me, it means that if I take my image into my editing system when I shoot AVC HD and I try to do some color correction and color grading, just a little movement on the sliders and the image starts to degrade. You can tell you're doing something to the image that you don't want to do. With XAVCS, I can move those sliders a lot more and get a lot more latitude working with the image in post-production with that codec. Now that said, while I really like that, one thing you're going to need, and I don't necessarily dislike it, but you are going to need SDXC cards. And these are a little bit more expensive, but the price has been coming down on them a lot. And so it's really nice because it's 64 gigs. I can shoot all day on the one card, and it shoots really high bit rate. This records 50 megabits a second. Another really cool thing about this camera is the continuous autofocus, something I don't get on the 60D. I do get on the A5100 and above, A6000. And so it does a great job with the facial tracking, and even being at a relatively shallow depth of field. The background is a little blurry there. What am I at? 3.5. And it does a great job of holding me in focus, and it does it smoothly. And something that's really cool is it does the continuous autofocus. You can change the speed of the focus. So the Canon 70D, it does a really good job on its auto AF, on the autofocus, but it goes in and out really fast. Whereas this, the Sony A5100, does a great job of letting you choose between slow, medium, and fast. And that focus pull, that transition from one focus point to another, is slower or faster depending on what setting you use. So that's nice. You can make sort of the speed of your focus pulling selectable with this camera. So that's very cool. In addition to it having really good continuous autofocus, and that's the key. Will this thing keep me in focus? related to a vlogging style shoot, the other auto functions in this camera are really good. I walked around most of the time and I used shutter priority. So I let the camera decide the shutter based on the exposure or the scene that I was in, light or dark. I also set the auto ISO on and it did that too. And the transition between the places when it was light and dark did a great job. So the auto functions on this are really cool. And even auto white balance has a white balance shift on it, which is if you are in a scene with fluorescent lights and the white balance, you can't quite dial it in, you can move the color around. You can shift it to get the exact white balance you need. Now it's on the auto function, not the Kelvin function. I didn't see it there. So there's a bit of a compromise there. Another really cool thing about this camera, 1080p, 60 frames a second. So you get really smooth slow motion and you don't have to decide if to drop down to 720p or 1080p. It's right there while you're shooting 1080. Or if you want to do 1080 and you're shooting sports and you want to shoot 60 frames a second, so it's less motion blur, you have that option. Another cool feature, charge via USB, just plug it right into the wall. That was very handy, didn't have to take the battery out. So again, I really like the Sony a5100. It does have some limits. The lack of an audio input for me doesn't mean if it's my first camera, I'm gonna go out and buy this camera. I'm going my microphone direct to my DSLR, and you can do that if you have good microphones to override the DSLR preamp, and that just makes shooting so much easier. So if you're gonna do the dual sync, then you could buy this as a primary camera. It's great to take with you everywhere, like I said, but it has some other uses as well. It could be a B-roll camera if you're just gonna go out, or your B camera, right? It can be a second camera. If you need a more affordable camera for your second cam, so you can get that other angle, this is a great option for that too. So lots you can do with that. At the price, you get so much. So pretty cool camera. All right, if you have questions, ask in the comments. I will answer as soon as possible, and I'll see you next time.